much, Dr. Vaca, for joining us here for our very first teacher talk on our Future Teachers Network. We're so excited to be starting this series, and who better to start with than you, Dr. Vaca. So I have a few questions for you today, and whenever you're ready, we're going to go ahead and get started.
We're ready. Thank you.
All right, let's go for it. Okay, so I'd love for you just to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us more about your role as a superintendent and principal for your school district and just kind of your story a little bit. So could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Absolutely. So I'll start with a little bit of background. Actually grew up in Fillmore here in Ventura County and lived there the first, 18 years of my life and had a great experience in school. Was really not, academically oriented. I thought I was going to be a professional soccer player. And so that's where my full efforts went. Reality check when I got injured my senior year and headed down to Northridge. So
Yikes.
Northridge is where I've done all my schooling from my bachelor in urban planning to actually my doctorate in educational leadership. So
Wow.
that's a little bit in terms of my background. I started out as a teacher in LA Unified back in '91 and then progressed to administrator at Palmdale School District. Then moved on to Santa Monica, Malibu, and headed here back to Ventura County in Ventura Unified as a principal at the elementary, middle, and high school level. And the last 7 years before coming to SOMIS, I was the assistant superintendent of human resources in Oxnard School District, which is an elementary district here in our county. So that's a little bit about myself. What's my role currently is that I see myself as a facilitator, as a person who needs to inspire our kids to really make the most out of their education. I have 240 students here in SOMIS. And so I definitely, every day that I get here, I want to make sure that I connect with each and every one of my kids and make sure that they're happy just to be here. And if you get to connect with them on a personal level, then the academics come a little easier. So this is the school where everybody knows your name, and that's something that we definitely take pride in. So again, I see myself as a facilitator here in SOMIS.
Yeah, what an incredible opportunity. Yeah, build those relationship with those kids. Yeah, when everyone knows each other, small school like that. Big chance
Absolutely.
to make an impact. So how cool. So what brought you back to Ventura County?
You know what? This was where I grew up. I mean, once I got into education after leaving the city planning world, I knew I wanted to go back to a place where I had grown up, where I could make a difference and where people could see that it is possible. Because one of the things that I came to the realization was, as a teacher, is when kids see that you're sitting in a certain position or are dressed a certain way, it's feasible for them. And I'm going to tell you a really quick story, which kind of reinforced. I was visiting my wife-to-be as my girlfriend at a school, and a little kid just kept staring at me, and I had no clue what the problem was. So I asked him, and I said, "Is everything okay?" And he said, "Yeah, I just have never seen a Mexican wearing a tie." And I mean, that was pretty powerful.
Wow.
And to me, if that was the feeling there in the urban area, inner city, I only imagine what the dynamics were in Ventura County. So I came to Ventura County as an invite by another administrator who at the time was the HR person for Ventura. So the fact that I was raised here, but most importantly, I saw a dramatic need to really inspire kids. And I'm not going to limit to a certain type of kid, but inspire all kids. When I came on board, I was relatively young at the time too. So I think I could relate to a lot of the kids.
Yeah, what a wonderful chance to be such a role model like that for those kids. I'm sure it's so rewarding to return back to your roots, back where you grew up and really get a chance to make an impact like that. Wonderful,
Absolutely.
wonderful. So let's see what else we have. So can you tell us more about your educational journey? So where did you go post college, after college? Could you tell us more about your career journey, how that related to your education?
It's just as interesting. So I actually was a paraeducator at Plummer Elementary in LA Unified, and I graduated. So the day after graduation, I went to my assistant principal back then, Mr. Ted Roeder, and asked for a letter of recommendation for a city planning job that I was intending to apply for. And so he stopped me and he said, well, do you want to be a teacher here? And I said, well, what do you mean? I don't have a credential. I don't know the first thing about planning. And so he said, yeah, there's an emergency program, emergency credential program, whereas you can do your schooling as you're teaching. And so after a weekend of thinking about it, I came back and said, yeah, sure. And so that's where my journey started. I taught a 5-6 bilingual class back then, and it was quite the adventure. I had, I think, like 36 kids, and half of them were newcomers to the United States and only spoke Spanish. So the fact that I spoke Spanish was an advantage, but I really did struggle. Now that I think back, just trying to plan good lessons and most importantly, really provide kids with an excellent education. So that was kind of my initiation. I ended up teaching 5 additional grade levels as a teacher before moving on to my administrative role. But it was one of those things where you don't ever think, what will happen if I make that choice of becoming a teacher? So to the folks that are on the fence, you're never going to know if you don't try it. But one thing that I will say is if you don't like kids and you don't like people, then definitely teaching is not a career path that you should go into.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's so incredible. Just one small decision like that, one person who recognized your talents and your whole career shifted. How
It
incredible.
shifted from city planner to a teacher. So there
Yeah,
you go.
there you go. There you have it. Um, so it also said that you worked in HR. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I'd love to hear how that relates and how that all connects.
All right. So what part of HR do you want to hear about? Because HR is quite the place. You ask and I will tell you.
Oh my goodness. Start wherever you would like. But yes.
The biggest impact to me was sitting in a position where I could guide folks towards their passion. And I only say that not because I had the power, but I had seen personalities and I could match personalities to be able to have a very thorough conversation. So for example, I had a candidate who was an actual office manager in one of our schools, but every time I talked to her or every time I visited the school, there was this connection with kids that she definitely, you could tell from day one, you know what, this person would make an outstanding candidate. Come to find out, she had a BA already. So we started on a teacher pathway program that we had there in Oxnard. She took part in it and it was part of my first class who attained the teaching credential. And so that there taught me that, you know, the power of just sitting down with somebody, because when you think HR, you think of the principal's office, right? You're going to go to HR because you did something wrong. And so I try to change that perception to one that if you want to change your career pathway, if you have questions about what credentials you need or what are the career pathways that are definitely going to give you a return on your investment, then that's what HR had become by the time I left HR. It was more of an area where I could sit with people one-on-one or 1-to-3 and provide them guidance on what and how to attain their career goals and what the steps would be, and not just hypothetically, but also if I didn't have that experience in a field. So for example, in school psychologists, then I would match up with a school psychologist that I knew either from local area or from LA or from a national standpoint, because you know one of the things that I've been able to do is create a very vast net of networking. And so to me, HR definitely changed in terms of perspective. Once again, one of a principal's office to one of advice, and more important, really support. Because at the time when I got into HR, there were several programs that definitely provided funding for folks who wanted to be teachers, and definitely experiences at school sites where programs didn't exist before. So anybody who was interested, we made every effort to place for visits to take place at the school so that they really knew what it entailed. One thing is to take a peek or think, oh, I was a student and I know what teaching is, to one where you definitely volunteer for 2 to 3 weeks at the school and you get to see live what a teacher goes through on a daily basis. So those are the kind of, I think, supportive HR. Now, the other HR is one where you really definitely become a lawyer because you are needing to be privy on the laws and policies that change every other week, especially with COVID and credentialing. You've got to be able to interpret. And most importantly, I think, as an HR person, you cannot prejudge even a person who has done multiple things that weren't correct. So you have to be kind of, in a sense, a person who goes in there is has the capacity to be non-partial, and most importantly, to kind of serve as the moral compass of a district. Because once the credibility is gone in your HR department, then everything else in the district is not going to function.
Yeah. Wow, what an important role. Yeah. And not too different from a teacher. It sounds like there's a lot of overlap there, from encouraging, supporting, being that compass, that guidance. Yeah, a lot of overlap. Fascinating stuff. Um, let's see what's up next here. So tell us more about your teaching journey then. What made you want to become a teacher? I know you said it wasn't something that was initially on your radar, but how tell me about that weekend. How did you decide that you wanted to be a teacher?
Absolutely. To me, one of the critical things in my life has been my father has always focused on helping others. He had a really good background in a lot of different things. And in the neighborhood where we lived, there really wasn't a whole lot of money. And so people used to depend on my dad to go fix their water heater, or fix their piping, or work on their cars. And so I think early on, I had that niche to follow in his footsteps and be able to carry that into the educational field. So going back into that weekend, one of the things that I thought about was definitely money, right? You're not going to get rich getting into education. And it's going to be a struggle, just getting the basic necessities if you decide to go in that pathway. So I thought about that and planning. I think planning, I was going to make about $20,000 to $25,000 more back in '91. That's pretty significant. So one of the things that I had to fall back on is what was going to make me happy. And I think, to me, a happy life is much better than a stressful life. And when I thought about some of the things that I would be able to do with kids, beyond the classroom, like I said, I was a soccer player from very early on, and I knew I could pass that on and motivate kids to enter school through that path. And then in addition to that, I knew that I could also relate to them because I grew up in similar circumstances as they did. And so I used that to my advantage. And I think those were the two things that, when making the decision, really came front and center, to be able to say, you know what, I can do this. But not only can I do this, I think I'm going to do an exceptional job, and I'm going to change lives. And if I could change one life per year, that's a lot more than would have been if I wouldn't be there. So those were the deciding factors when the decision came down.
Wow, how incredible. Yeah, that's for sure. Teaching is a selfless role. It really is, but such a rewarding one. Um, yeah, you have the chance to just make a big impact in their lives. Yeah. Um, so going back to the students, how do you feel you can ensure that all students feel that they are important or equally represented in the classroom? That can be such a challenging topic. How can we make sure that all learning styles, all cultures, personalities, whatever, are they feel represented in the classroom?
I think right now, and I may be politically incorrect with my answer, but I don't think it's about equity. I think it's about connecting with kids
Mm.
and knowing the student before you get into the curriculum and into the lessons. So you have to make an effort to personally find out what makes them go. And it's no different with adults. Teachers who are great teachers, you have to connect with them and find out, what do they do away from the school? Do they have a hobby with trains? Do they love to travel? Do they enjoy their family? Can you go relieve them for 30 minutes to go see an assembly of their child?
Mm.
So with kids, it's the same type of thing. We need to find out, are these kids, are they having dinner when they go home? The one fallacy that exists in education is this, is they don't go back to the homes that we go to, right? They don't go and have a refrigerator full of food or their cabinets and pantries full of goodies. They're trying to figure out, what the next day is going to be like. And so one of the things that really has to happen is you got to find that out, and you got to find that out for all kids. So one of the things that I did early on was I spent about 2 to 3 weeks before I got into curriculum to find out who they were through reading, through oral stories, through just sit downs with kids. So it was education, but I wasn't, doing the scope and sequence from the book
Yeah.
because half of the kids probably couldn't read the book. And so I was finding out through oral history, right? And engaging these children so that I was able to then carry out my job as a teacher. And so again, people skip that part. You go right into it, and especially new teachers, right? You have to go through from page 1 to 100, and then the years out, and you're going to be in front of the principal, and he's going to ask you, oh, well, how much did you cover? And so I think that's the really a bad approach. The approach is get in trouble, but say, look, I know that Johnny here, I know he's not reading, but I could tell you why, and this is what we've done thus far this year. And so that's where the concept of value added really comes in, is where does the child come in and how much has he gained in 1 year in my class, right? As
Mhm.
opposed to, I'm going to take this exam, which is normed across the nation, and he's going to be, does not meet standards. I think that the progress has to be through the individual progress of every student, and you won't know that until you meet them personally.
Yeah, really getting to know our students and meeting them where they're at is so important in establishing that trust so you can really progress. Yeah, getting to know those students. I love that.
And staying away, I think staying away from the catchphrases that come through the decades, because I've been around 30, over 30 years now, and there's always it's equity or whatever it is. But define what equity is through actions, right? I'm not saying
Yeah.
not to make it important, but really understand what it is, and not just, oh my goodness, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to celebrate Hispanic Latino one day. No, do it every day.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's about people. Yeah, about getting to know people over programs. I love it. Um, yeah, so what advice would you have then for someone who's pursuing a career in education? Could you help us out? We're all on this journey. We're excited to get into the classroom. What advice do you have?
It is such an exciting, I think, journey. Enjoy it. Enjoy the
Mhm.
journey. Don't worry about taking every exam today and having everything that you're going to do lined up. Because what's going to happen is you're going to get to the school, and all that's going to go out the door. You have to, one bit of advice that I would really give to somebody who's starting is not to be set on one grade level. Oh, I want to be a kinder teacher, or I want to be a third grade teacher. Open yourself up, because you really won't know how effective you are in a different grade. So the bit of advice that I would say is go in and experience what a multitude of teachers are like. So go in and volunteer and say, hey, can I volunteer? I'm working towards my credential, or I'm going towards education, and I want to see what it really looks like. The benefit from young folks such as yourself is that you can organize your time to do that, to really get in there and take a look. and ask questions, right? Nobody knows everything. And I think, to me, as people are beginning to develop kind of their path, is you're so worried about being perfect, about, oh, I want to do this the right way. I want to be molded in this. I'll give you an example. I have a young a lady who I had a talk about a month ago, and she's finishing up her BA this winter. And she was so worried about, oh my goodness, I need to, take this test and this test and that test. And at the end of the conversation, I asked her, so what do you want to do? Well, I want to go into the teaching credential program. And so I asked, so do you have experience in the classroom? She said, no. Well, that's where you start. You need to get in there to find out. And right now she's doing excellent work. I actually hired her as an intervention specialist here, as a paraeducator, to work with my teacher. And she's getting to see all that instruction is meant to be, because she's working with kids who are developing literacy and across the grade levels. So to me, I think that experience really is valuable. And I get it that you guys have a heavy load with your units, but find time to really get into the classes and the challenges that are facing our nation today, because I think you will be better prepared if you've been in a class and enter into a credential program versus not having any type of experience at a site and starting a credential program, because then all the information is not relevant, right? So I think, to me, it's like any other field, is get as much experience as you can before you enter your credential program. And so, like I said, and most important, I think, to me, is enjoy what you do, because that's going to be what you're going to be getting up every morning for. I didn't enjoy my last year as an HR guy. And guess what? I knew I had to get out, because I didn't want to be miserable and make other people miserable. So I think that it's important to get up each and every day and enjoy what you're doing. And no better way to find out than to go there to the site and see what teaching is all about. And then the other thing is reach out to people. People love for you guys to come and ask. You will be surprised. You will say, oh, they're busy. Yeah, if somebody is a true educator, we will make time for you. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Even when you're in or when you get out of your credential program, ask and call and say, hey, I just graduated. I'm interested. This is what I bring to the table. And right now, I think it's a good time for teachers to come into the field.
That is such great advice. Yeah, that's so valuable. Man, that hands-on experience is such an important piece, and really making those connections and learning and just enjoying the process. Such great stuff. I appreciate that so much. So let's see, before we wrap out today, a couple more things to go over. So as a superintendent, what measures do you take to help support student engagement and attendance throughout your school district?
Okay, let's start on the engagement piece. I think engagement piece has to do teaching something that's relevant to our students, right? So you won't know if you're hitting the target unless you've spent time on assessments. So I think as a superintendent, it's my duty to establish quarterly benchmarks. If you don't, then you really don't have any ongoing targets, right? You're going to wait for the end of the year CASP, and then you're going to spend your summer organizing all that data, and then you're going to give your teachers that data in August. And by the time they have time to review that data, it's probably November, December. And so it's really important that you have a process to be able to measure where kids are on a daily. So as important as I just mentioned with assessments, you also have to have a good process for checking for understanding daily. So do you have strategies where you do checkouts where kids, before they leave, they have to answer a question on the lesson that they just learned? As kids are engaged in lessons, do you have a system where you're calling on different kids, so you're not calling on the same 2 to 3 Johnnies or Juans every day? So this all ties together, and it comes back to the same thing, is what relevant information do you have to make an educated decision to change your instructional practice? Because I just spent, my last staff meeting looking at, oh my goodness, what did the kids learn? And oh, if they fail, well, why are they not successful? But that's the perfect opportunity to say, hey, if 70% of my kids didn't get a passing grade, is it the kids or is it me? And it's really hard to do this, is to self-reflect and say, oh, you know what? Maybe I didn't deliver that lesson as good as I thought I was going to deliver. So those are pieces for me that really need to be in place. And I'm going to be very honest and very sincere. Very few superintendents in our nation are even engaged with curriculum. Very few. Because the most that they're engaged is probably at the cabinet meeting on Mondays, talking to the assistant sup of ed services. And that's sad, because even the principals who think they go and visit schools, they don't have time to stop and get the context of the lesson. And even if they ask the little kid and then go on, when is it the next time that they're going to follow through? So I'm a little biased, but as a smalls, when you serve as a superintendent and principal, you get front row seats every single day. I just today came from teaching my second day in a 7th and 8th grade, right? And it was teaching the whole day, not part, not visit, but teaching. And that's the advantage, I think, of a smalls. I think that anybody who wants to move on to a superintendent job in a bigger district, I kind of did it backwards, but I think definitely you have to engage kids on a daily basis. You have to know what's going on in the instructional world. You have to ask questions. You have to follow up and know what the current trends and what's working and not working in education. So you've got to read, and you've got to really put yourself in a situation where you're in the practice and not just getting information third party. So that's the piece, as you asked in terms of the first part of the question. The second part of the question, attendance, right?
Yes.
Kids have to like school. That's it seems so simple in my response, but if a student is not comfortable for whatever the reason, whether they feel out of place in class when instruction is being given, or somebody is making it uncomfortable, and it could be an adult or a kid, right? Then it's not going to be a good scenario for our kids. And so you've got to find out what makes them go. So if you're going to have a program where you celebrate perfect attendance, where you make kids enjoy their experience at school by providing engaging activities and having programs that really talk to them, then that's awesome. I'll tell you right now, what I'm doing with my kids is really opening up the world of coding from our little guys all the way through 7th and 8th. And with my 7th and 8th graders, they're going to have the opportunity of engaging in 3D printing and working on building a go-kart. The go-kart is going to be built bottom up. We already have the frame, we have the wheels, we have all the components, and they're going to take it apart and make it better. So that's something that you don't see happening every day, but who's to say you can't do it, right? So you got to think really like a student. What would make me want to get up every day and go to school? And then as soon as you get that, then you have to talk to your teachers and find out what gets them to come to school every day and teach with a smile. Because if those aren't in place, everything else is just pie in the sky. And I say this because I've been, like I said, I've been at this for a very long time. And I don't intend to be an expert in any of this, but I'll tell you today, I know when my kids are happy and when they're not, because I get to see them every day. And I see them in class. And now as a person who can substitute in any grade level here, it's a major advantage because I see what the results are and where my kids are. And then I can ask the questions to my folks and say, hey, why is this kid stuck here? And so that's, I think, the major advantage of where I'm sitting today as the superintendent, principal of SOMIS School is there's so much to do, very little time. And then with COVID, I think last year we got derailed a little bit, and I refuse to have that happen this year. So, we're focusing on instruction and making sure kids are happy at SOMIS.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, comes back to knowing our students, like we talked about, knowing what drives them, right? Okay, the last question I have here, I know we're running a little short on time, but I'd love to hear a little bit about the greatest lesson that you've learned as an administrator in multicultural and bilingual programs.
The assumption that because a student may speak Spanish, this is my own personal, because I speak Spanish and because I'm Mexican, that all kids should progress at the same rate that I do. And they don't. Every kid, every student, Mexican, whatever their ethnicity is, they're different. And so I'm not saying to look at the differences, but acknowledge that they learn at different, timelines, that they have different wants, that even if my background is similar to them, doesn't mean that they have a dad and a mom that are caring. They may have both, but doesn't mean that they're having the same experience I did. So that's the biggest aha in my career, is don't judge and don't assume. Don't assume that they have the same experience that you do. That's the biggest mistake by anybody. And so find out who they are. Spend time finding out, and I think that's the important thing. And I'll leave you guys with one thing, is every student provides you with an opportunity to really be successful. And that is when you provide them the, solid basis of an education and a foundation that is great, then that's the opportunity that you get with our kids. So I hope I answered your questions. This is it was a pretty fun series. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. I know I learned so much during this interview, and I'm sure everyone back home just gained so much wisdom. You've provided us with such great advice and just such great stuff to think about. So thank you so much for spending your time with us today, and we look forward to collaborating more with you in the future. Thank you for all your hard work. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, and thank you and Kalu for providing us with this opportunity. And for kids who are out there who are starting, call me. If you have any questions, call the school. If I don't have the answer, I have plenty of people who definitely do have the answer for you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Vaca. Have a great night.
All right. Have a good night. Thank you.